drivers from overtime pay. Um, you could understand the reasoning for this because you know it would be overtime. Because they always got to think about the end consumer. The purchasing price of a product that you're hauling. A big part of that is the shipping costs. So they can't you know uh, pay truck drivers all this overtime pay. Otherwise, shipping costs would go through the roof. So they exempt truck drivers from overtime pay, which and you pay truck drivers by the mile, which it makes good sense. Productivity. The more miles you drive, the more pay you make. However, the industry has taken advantage of the drivers. We all know this. It's abuse towards the drivers. So now they keep piling work onto the driver because they're not paying you hourly. You're only getting paid by the mile. So what are some examples of corporations making you do all the work? That you know they don't have to pay for. It's one thing if they pay you for it. It's another thing if they don't pay you for it. So let's say, for example, all the paperwork that truck drivers have to do. With the bill lading and scanning and sending the paperwork in, and the scale tickets, things like this. The companies, they don't pay you to do that. So all that is office work that you're doing. You're not getting paid for. You could say it's kind of minor, but you do it every day. I mean, it could easily be an hour, of office work daily that you're not being paid for. Detention, Crete pays after 2 hours, but the first 2 hours you're not getting paid. You're not getting paid anything for that. So again, that's free labor. You're there attending to the customer, but you're not getting paid. How about when the customer doesn't completely empty the trailer? They leave all the trash in there, all the packing material, all the 2x4s. That was all part of the load, but they don't clean up their own mess. They leave it for the driver. So before you go pick up your next load, you got to spend another 30 minutes or an hour to clean out your trailer. It's free labor. You're not getting paid to do that. So over and over again, we see examples where the work is being piled onto the driver. The driver's not getting paid for that, not at all. So this is some of the bad practices within the entire industry is driver pay. Drivers are working extraordinarily long hours, and they're not getting paid for that. They're not getting overtime pay. They're not even getting any pay unless they're driving, unless their wheels are rolling. You're not making any money. Now, some companies offer profit sharing if you're a company driver. It doesn't do you any good if you're the owner operator. And they can cover over all this stuff and say, well, we offer profit sharing at the end of the year. That's something. At least it's something. But it doesn't really make a lot of sense to the drivers. Why they have to work so hard, and they have to do all this extra work for free. It's free labor. How about when you go to the customer and maybe they have a yard dog, maybe they don't, and then you have to move trailers, for the customer, so that you're spending an extra 30 minutes to an hour of your labor moving trailers around, because the customer asked you to. You don't get paid for that. You don't get paid for that. So throughout the course of a year, you're losing thousands and thousands of dollars of wages, and you're exerting all this labor for nothing. So this is why a lot of people think trucking is a job of last resort. They don't want to do it, because it's too much work, not enough pay. If truck drivers were paid for their actual work that they perform, then they probably could achieve a middle class lifestyle. But it seems like the companies and the entire industry wants the driver to do all the work. Like when you check in at shipping and receiving, you got to fill out all the paperwork. That's like, why do you even have a person there? I swear AI develops, we can do away with dispatchers and shipping and receiving clerks because we could just do it all automated through AI. Why even have them there? Because drivers are already doing all the work. So why deal with the attitude? you know, I'd rather deal with the AI and have a better attitude than some of these shippers and receivers. But and maybe if we have robotic loaders and unloaders, the machines can clean up their mess. I don't think we'll ever have AI driven trucks. It's just too complex. I don't think the public would want AI driven trucks. But when you think about your pay in your career, you're working extremely hard for very little money. Extremely hard. You're not getting paid. No other worker in the country works for free. Unless they're like a nonprofit. But even nonprofits get paid. So this is stuff you do willingly, voluntarily, and companies could say, well, we give you a higher pay per mile. It's like, well, not really. I haven't gotten an increase in years. I don't think other drivers have gotten pay increases, on an annual basis. A lot of times workers, if you're working for like an office job or a production job, you typically get 3% annual wage increases. Drivers don't get that. So this is a problem within the industry. Nobody wants to pay the driver, but everybody wants the driver to work for free. This is why people quit. This is too much work, not enough pay. I think one of the ways you can try to minimize this impact is save your money and invest it, and try to grow your savings through investments. There's really no better way to beat inflation or beat lack of pay increases than through your portfolio, your stock portfolio, your IRA, your individual brokerage accounts. Take advantage of the stock market. Buy the dip, things like this. You want to be diversified, that's for sure. I think being an owner operator is better than being a company driver. That's just my personal preference. Some guys prefer to be a company driver, but like company drivers, for example, they'll be asked to take the truck and a trailer through the car wash. They don't get paid to do that. They don't get paid. They're not being paid hourly to do that. That's typically time that they would be on a 10-hour break. They're not getting paid to do that. Or how about when tire repair, trailer repairs, tractor repairs? A lot of companies don't pay you while the equipment's being repaired, but yet you can't leave. You have to attend to the equipment. So again, all this free labor, all this free time spent trying to make it work, and you're never being paid overtime. You drive on the holidays, you're getting paid the same as if you didn't drive on holidays. No special pay, no Christmas bonus or New Year's bonus or 4th of July bonus, Memorial Day bonus, none of that. Other employees at different occupations, especially if they're like in a, like say a union workforce, they negotiate these things. The workers do. The drivers don't, because the drivers are paid by the mile. But typically, if you were an hourly worker, you would get holiday pay, extra pay, in addition to overtime. So a lot of people would volunteer to work overtime to get that extra pay, but truck drivers, they don't get it. This is a mark on the industry, is that they don't fairly compensate drivers for all the work that they actually do. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the internet.